it's Karen Berniston here with my monthly designer challenge video. The theme this month is to make a card using any of our pop-up dies that are powered by a rubber band. So there are 5 choices available, all 3 of our pop-up balls, and then our new surprise cube pop-up and our new BAM box pop-up. I will be using our BAM box pop-up, both to animate the little dog and flowers, but also inside the tiny house pop-up so that my doghouse pops up in a different way. Instead of building it over the fold, I am actually using the BAM box to animate it. For the structure of my pop-up, I will use our tiny house pop-up, the Doghouse tiny house add-ons, and our BAM box pop-up. Normally the tiny house will face diagonally over a card fold, but by using the BAM box I can have it face forward. The first thing I did is die cut and assembled a tiny house pop-up structure, and then also die cut the roof. And those pieces came out of the tiny house pop-up, and there is a separate assembly video on that die set if you need it for getting to this point. There are 2 tapered tabs on the bottom of the tiny house that are normally built over a fold. But for this assembly, I only need 1 tab, and I am going to use the one on the side of the house. I'm going to build it with that tab on the left side of the house. So the other tapered tab, the one that is on the pointed side of the house, I'm going to take my scissors and remove it. And that side where I removed the tab is going to be the front of the house for this assembly, so I'll go ahead and label that with an F. There are 2 identical BAM boxes in the die set. Now I thought initially I might use 2 of them inside the tiny house, but I ended up only needing 1. There is also an assembly video on the BAM box pop-up, so if you need to see this process go a little slower, you can watch that other video. But I'm working the 3 mountain folds, then the valley, then the 2 additional mountain folds to put the folds into that BAM box piece. Then I'm going to put some glue down into that valley and seal it closed. So I'm using my LINECO neutral pH adhesive in my fine tip bottle. We do sell both of those items on our website. We also sell little baggies of rubber bands to fit our rubber band pop-ups on our website, or you can get them on Amazon. I am using a number 8 Firm Stretch Alliance rubber band in my BAM box. So I take that little rubber band and I get it around that shelf and into those 2 holes inside the BAM box. And then I turn it over and I take that fold and I put it right up underneath the crescent. And I just hold that in place while I stretch the rubber band up and over the crescent and into the other 2 holes on the BAM box. Okay? Then I need to put that crescent right back where it started again. So the crescent is only for access to the rubber band. After the rubber band is in, then the crescent goes right back where it started again. You put your strong adhesive everywhere, and then I just bring the other side of the box over and into that adhesive. Now I can reach into the box to make sure that everything gets sealed really well, and then I can also collapse the box and give it a good press in the closed position. That is the assembly of the BAM box pop-up. I've just used a medium weight cardstock. There is a decorator die in the set to be able to add some panels to it if you need to strengthen it or decorate it. This one's going inside the tiny house, so it doesn't need decoration. The corner of the BAM box that I want to glue inside the tiny house is the one that has the 2 holes for the rubber bands that are closer to the edges, so the wider set of holes, if that makes sense. And then I'm going to add my strong adhesive to the 2 panels around that corner. Okay, then inside the tiny house, I'm going to put that BAM box in the left back corner, and I'm lining it up right till it comes to the edge, the upper edge of the house right there, so that it won't impede the roof, but it's up a little bit from the bottom, so that it won't impede the tab at the bottom as well. Giving it a second for the glue to set up, and then I'm just going to collapse the tiny house down, and you'll see that the BAM box will make it open again. Okay, this is coming close to becoming a full square again, but as you know, when you glue a fold inside a fold, it doesn't always make the corner perfectly. So what I am noticing on my tiny house is that when it is now expanded, instead of being a perfect square, it is actually just a little bit of a diamond. Let me turn that over so you can see that. Okay, so here's the adjustment I need to make for that. And that is the little shelf that's inside the BAM box that comes over and makes it stop at a square. I'm going to take just a little smidge of that off. So essentially my BAM box can open further than a square, and that's going to compensate for the fold in a fold tension. So I took just a little bit off the end of the crossbar, okay? Making sure I didn't cut my rubber band. And then now look at the difference. Now it can expand all the way to a square because basically I'm making the band box open a little bit further than a square. I hope that makes sense. So the closed position for the house in the card is going to be to flatten it, and then it's going to fold over the top of that tab. So the tab can fold under the house. Of course, with that band box in the way, the fold is probably going to make a new fold a little bit further away from the first one. So kind of like a gusseted fold. For styling my tiny house, I'm going to use our Doghouse Tiny House add-ons. I'm going to take advantage of the optional stamping feature of these two dies to be able to add stamped slats to the panels for the sides of the house. To save my fingers from the ink, I am going to just use Post-it notes. So Post-it notes is a great way when you're using our stamping dies to save your fingers. You can put the Post-it note over the die and use that to press it into the ink pad. And you can even use the Post-it note to pick the die up then, if it sticks. Of course, you have to make sure that it sticks. But pick it up with the ink on it and then transfer it over onto your paper for running through the machine. So just an option. We also have the magnetic pickup tool, which is a great way to transfer the dies, but a Post-it note works as well. Our dies work in any die cutting machine that can accommodate a wafer thin die. Today I'm using my Spellbinders Platinum 6. So again, that is optional. If you don't put any ink on the dies, it'll still press the slats into the piece. It'll just be a debossed look instead of an inked look. Cleanup of our stamping dies is just a rag and some water. So you don't need any chemicals. Just spray those dies with water and wipe it off with a rag. The door opening and frame for the doghouse are on the same die. So what I like to do is just put two colors on top of each other and roll through at the same time. And that way I get both the door and the frame in two different colors. With a doghouse, the door comes all the way to the bottom edge. So usually there isn't a lip that the dog would have to, step over. So the die set is arranged that way as well. So this panel, which is a decorator panel that fits the tiny house, lines up with the bottom edge of the tiny house, no shadow on the bottom edge. And then the other sides do have a shadow. The other die in the set that has a stamping feature is the paw print. And another way to transfer it, besides the Post-it note, would be the Spellbinders magnetic pickup tool. And we do sell those pickup tools on our website as well. You can also ink our stamping dies using a brush marker or with a small ink pad and just brushing over the top of the die. I'm printing the name of the dog in small letters on some white cardstock. So I've decided that this dog's name is Sport. And then I would like this bone to be shiny. So I'm going to put a piece of clear packaging tape over the cardstock before die cutting. And then I'm going to use the larger bone out of the set to cut out the dog's name. And of course that would look great even without the name. Now I'm ready to add the panel to the front of the tiny house. I've added the bone and the paw print already, and then my lineup is going to be the bottom edge of the house because those will line up perfectly and that will leave a nice shadow on the other sides. Then I just went around and did the same with the other panels, adding them to the other panels of the house lined up with the bottom edge. Adding the roof of the tiny house is the same as normal assembly, so I just add my adhesive to the two tabs. Then I just open up the roof. I like to flatten the house so that I can really get it in there lined up with the fold, and then I just center the roof so that the same amount of overhang is in the front and the back, and attach those two tabs. So that is just normal tiny house assembly to add the roof. The only difference is the band box inside is going to make that house open up on its own, and you can only collapse it in one direction. So it's not going to collapse in both anymore, only one way. For my gatefold card, I started with a piece of cardstock 11 inches by 5 inches, and then I scored it at 3.5 inches from the left-hand side and at 8.5 inches from the left-hand side. What that's going to give me is a 5 by 5 inner square panel with a 2.5 inch flap and a 3.5 inch flap. Then I just went stash diving for pattern paper and cut some panels to fit inside the card a little bit smaller than the cardstock panels. Then I matched the same colors for my band box pop-up, so the same green cardstock and the same pattern paper. There is a decorator rectangle die in the set to be able to cut those decorator panels. The 3 decorator dies that I'll be using on the card include our Squares Crosshatch, Backyard Charms, and Mini Alphabet and Numbers. And the grass out of the Backyard Charms I've just cut down so that it'll fit on the front of the BAM box and just tucked it behind the pattern paper so that it sticks up a little higher than the BAM box. There is a cute little dog that comes included in the Doghouse Tiny House add-ons, and it does have a stencil feature for the eyes, nose, and belly. So leaving the paper in the die, I'm going to use a black pen to add the eyes and the nose, and then I'll use a white gel pen to color in the belly. And then while I have my white gel pen out, I'll go ahead and add a little catch light to the nose and the eyes. Then I add the collar that comes in the set, and as a final touch, I'll just brush the edges with a little brown ink. Then a little glue on the bottom half of Sport, and glue that to the front of the BAM box. And I want to make sure that his paws stay above the bottom of the BAM box so that when I glue it inside the card, he has the capability of folding down and then popping up, and his little paws won't get bent. Okay, time to add these pieces inside the card. So the tiny house is going to be attached only with that small tab. So I add glue to the tab, and then I'm going to set that in there in the finished location where I want it to go, making sure that it's placed a little bit closer to the back of the card so that I have room on the front for it to collapse forward. I thought I was going to reach in with a bone folder, but I think I'm just going to fold the house over onto its side and then press the tab down. So I do have access to it by just lifting the house out of the way and then reaching in there and giving that tab a really good press and making sure that I like the location, that it's straight when it pops up. And then I can test the way that's going to fold flat by just bringing it into its flat position forward and then down onto that tab. So this is going to be the flat position for the house, and then you'll see it'll pop back up again. I actually wasn't sure if I was going to need a second BAM box inside the tiny house because I can put a second one in the opposite diagonal corner from the first one. So if it needs extra oomph to get up into that popped up position, I could add a second BAM box. This one doesn't need it, so I'm going to just stick with the one and carry on. Because the BAM box is powered by a rubber band and not a card fold, I can place it anywhere inside the card at any angle. I just want to make sure that in the flat position it doesn't cross any folds and that it is not too close to the tiny house so that it is impeding it at all when both pop up at the same time. So I'm going to give that a little check, and they are working wonderfully. From here it's just decorating. I'm going to put another little strip of grass inside the BAM box attached to the front edge so that when it pops up, that little piece of grass pops up as well. That will be a great place for me to put the dog bowl. Now here's a little decoration I wish I would have skipped or done differently. I put a square of cardstock under the doghouse with a heart cut out of the middle, and my thought was, oh, wouldn't that be fun? You'll only see it when you're, folding it down. But then here's what happens when you fold it down. I happen to put that square of cardstock in the perfect position so that the edge of the house actually catches against it and it stops it from opening. So I really struggled with this one because I'd glued it down. So I ended up having to put a little bit larger square over the top of the first one, moving the edge just far enough to the left that it couldn't catch anymore. So my suggestion, just put a little heart or something in the middle. Don't put anything on an edge where you could create a catch point. A couple of flowers cut from the Backyard Charms, and then I'm going to lay those flat in the card as high as I can get them so that the BAM box will touch them in the flat position and they'll stay out of the folds. And then I just need to make sure that they come up high enough so that they don't impede the roof. So that one was really close, but I happened to hit it on the first try, and then now both can pop up and not hit each other. Okay, so then I just used pieces that came out of the die sets I was using. So the squares, the alphabet, the little tiny flowers out of the tiny house, all of the bones and the dog bowl and things out of the Doghouse Tiny House add-ons, and just finished out the interior of this card. I am using strong magnets from K&J Magnetics. I'll put the link in the description box below. So I add my first magnet to the side of the left flap, and then I let the next magnet stick underneath the first one, add a strong tape to the top of it, and then I close the card to move it into the correct position. And I quickly discovered that 2 magnets was not going to be enough. It was not going to keep the card closed, so I had to add a third one. And if you don't want to spend 3 magnets on a card like this, I don't blame you. It's fine. Just use a belly band or a string closure instead. So magnets is only one way to keep the card closed, but there are other closures that would work just as well. Different types of closures may dictate which order you put your card together. So if you were doing a string closure, you may want to do the front flaps first so that you can hide brad prongs inside the card with the pattern paper. With magnets, I want to do them last so that I can hide the magnets underneath the pattern paper on the front of the card. I am a big fan of simple lead-ins with repeated elements for the fronts of cards. I don't like to double my work. I just take the same type of elements that I've used on the inside with my leftover materials and create a nice simple lead-in to the magic inside. This is the kind of card that's going to be displayed open anyway. My finished card measures 5 by 5 squares, so that'll fit in an A7 envelope for mailing. There is thickness to this card, though, because of the BAM boxes kind of being stacked over the top of each other in the closed position and the magnets, so you probably would need extra postage to mail it. Now, as with all rubber band pop-ups, if you leave that stored flat for a long period of time, it's going to stretch out those rubber bands to where the first time it opens, maybe it doesn't spring right up like you're seeing here. And that's fine. The good news is that rubber bands tend to regain their springiness after they've been left open for a while. So if you're going to make a card like this ahead, then just before you go to mail it or before you go to give it to somebody, just let it sit open for a few hours and let those rubber bands regain their original springiness, and that way you get that perfect reveal when they open the card. So give this alternate assembly a try, see if you like it with the tiny house and the BAM box for a different way to pop up that house. And of course you could use the other add-ons, so maybe you want to make this a gingerbread house or a haunted house or a church or school. Designer Challenge videos come with an associated blog post. You will find that in the description box below, and that's where you will find photographs of this card as well as links to all of the wonderful rubber band pop-up inspiration by our talented design team. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBerniston.com, where you can purchase these dies as well as find links to our other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.